Hello everybody, John here, and today onto the garage. I'm back in Ruby, the Rapido A-Class motorhome, and making good on something that I said in a previous video, in that I'm going to make something much better than this Dometic fridge and freezer latch, the sort of device that's supposed to stop the doors opening whilst you're travelling. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know I'm a very even-tempered sort of guy. If I've got a skill, it's patience, if I'm honest. And I don't tend to diss anybody or any products or anything. Even if I hate something, I just say, oh, I shan't be using it. I'm prepared to make an exception with this. I can see no merit in this design whatsoever. I am an engineer, so I've got some knowledge about me, but I don't think it would take an engineer to look at this and decide that it's a horrendous piece of design. So that's the locked position for the freezer. That's the locked position for the fridge. So they're in opposite directions for a start. So visually it doesn't line up. The tiny little grey logos are hard to see with good eyes. And if I reveal the unlocked symbol, how different does that look from a couple of foot away? Not at all. Then we add in the feel of these things. This one's intact. The one at the bottom has been repaired and is a bit stiffer, but that's, you know, original design intent, if you like. This used to have a sort of elongated lozenge shape as a slider. It's been replaced by a screw by a previous owner, which I completely understand because these things break all the time and you've got to buy a kit of parts to fix them, and the kit of parts is not cheap. Also makes me wonder about the intent behind this design. This claw catches a pin, and that pin is here, and in doing so, careful, will grab hold of the pin and hold the thing shut. So all good. And it does have, to be fair to it, two positions. One to keep the door very slightly ajar for when everything's turned off over winter, keep things fresh, and the fully clamped one. Trouble is, of course, this is rubbish. And if you were to close the door like that, then you're going to bend this lever. And some people have gone to the trouble of making new levers out of better quality material. And you know, well done to them. That's a way of improving these things. But even so, the design is not good. Plus, this is just inherently made to break. There's splits in the plastic here. Oh, look. Locked. Let's have a look at let's have a look at the top one. So that's the pin where everything clamps around. This is the correct assembly. It's come loose, and that's how it all works. But if you've got that in the wrong position and you shut the door, you're going to bend this pin and then you're going to break. It's just awful. I see no merit in it whatsoever. Plus, oh, just a sec. What's gone wrong now? That's a new way of going wrong. There we go. If I just lock that. Is that pretty? I don't think so. So anyway, I swore I'd get rid of it and replace it with something in my own design that is better cosmetically, functionally, visual aidily, add your own phrases, are just better. And what's more, I decided I could do it for next to no money, so I'm going to do that. The only thing that's happened, just to catch everyone up to speed if you didn't see my previous video, I switched the hinge sides on my fridge. So if you've got a Rapido 9090F like me, your fridge door is probably hinged this side so that it opens that way. I've switched mine around. That's just a personal preference. So I've got a blank space here on this side where the hinge was. You may have a blank space on this side where the hinge isn't. The design will work no matter which. And I say design, I've stared at this for an hour and a half. I've been in my garage, collected a collection of things. I have an idea how I'm going to do this. I'm not even going to draw it. I'm just going to build it on the fly. And let's see how we go. See if I can't beat that. This is literally all the bits and pieces I brought in from my shed. I'm going to base this design on a simple sprung-loaded turnbuckle. And I'm using these scraps of wood, probably, which I'm going to paint up as the actual turnbuckle. Imagine that, whoops, mounted properly so that it's in the middle of the gap and flush with the surface. To the extent I'll even put curve on it to match the front of the fridge, so I've balanced it there just for an idea. And if that was in the middle, so like that, you'd literally be able to reach in, pull, twist, and obviously shaped to look a little better. It will hold this in place here, and you'll be able to see that it's locked. And when you want to unlock it, because you're on site, and obviously this has got magnetic catches, so it doesn't need the latch normally, you just turn and let it go flat. That's my concept. I've got some bits and pieces that I know are going to be useful, played around with the idea a bit. I'm going to use these sort of, I guess you call them wardrobe building blocks, plug together things, and some riv nuts to base the design on. I've got some springs, some bolts, pivots, a few washers. Everything else I need, I'll just get as I need. So, cracking on. First thing I want to do is I want to fit these riv nuts into the front of the fridge. They're basically just threaded inserts in positions that are going to be useful to me. Okay, there's the two holes that the fridge door hinge was screwed into. I want to make the whole thing reversible, so it could go back to standard if I wanted it to. So what I'm going to do is come to the side, to the left hand side of this hole. First hole position doesn't actually matter that much if I'm honest. There we go. And I'll line it up vertically with the existing holes. Now I'm going to put this threaded insert in. So there's a screw thread up the centre. The outside is 6mm. So I've got a 6mm drill, which is where I'm going to drill here. And we're going to pop that in, slightly expand it, and the end result should be a threaded hole. On motor caravan fridges like this, they're what's called absorption fridges. There's not actually a lot in the way of mechanical parts, and those that there are at the back. So with a little bit of due care and attention, everything around the front is just insulation. and cosmetic. Oop. Just going to clean up the hole with a larger drill. If you don't press and turn the larger drill bit, it'll deburr the hole nicely. Good. So it's in the hole. Let's just drive him home. Should go in easier than that, but the trouble was the insulation, which is plastic, just kept dropping down and blocking the hole up. There we go. That's nice and flush. Then we use one of these. This is called a riv nut setting tool. It's basically like a pop riveter, but instead of putting the pop rivets in this sort of jaw system, there's a male screw thread and a little knob on the back, and you can screw the thread in. I'm going to put mine a little bit further, like so. Then what you can do is, like a pop riveter, pull the thread, in this case rather than the pop rivet's tail, towards you, and that will cause the far side of the panel to swell just a little bit, and in doing so it can't come back out. So tighten again a little bit, another squeeze, and also it won't spin in the hole because it's gripping the hole like that. Now in fairness, these small ones are smooth on the outside, so they can actually spin in the hole if you put enough force on, but that really shouldn't be an issue for the sorts of things you'd be using a tool like this for. There we go. So there's a threaded insert. Now, to be absolutely sure I get this little plastic base holes to line up, what I'm going to do is screw that in, then mark through the other side. Brilliant. So everything fits. What I'm going to do now is take this back off, and this hole in the middle, it's counterbored from the back. I'm going to drill it all the way through as a 9.5, and the reason for that is I want a spring to come through there. So just going to drill that hole all the way through. Small hole at the back, big hole at the front. Big drill. So here is what I've achieved so far. Just going to disassemble it for you. You've not missed much. Mainly me staring at the nuts, bolts, screws, etc. in my garage. So I've got 3 of the plastic blocks. 2 of them I've drilled out to 9.5mm, which is the size of a spring that I have. So 2 of those blocks, the spring can pass all the way through. 1 of the blocks I've kept completely standard, so it has a small hole in that side in the middle, and a larger counter bore in that side, and at the moment the spring will go into there, but only if you push it in. So that's snug in there now. So let's reassemble that. Okay, then I've got a bolt. and this is 57. My little stack is 44. Where are these plastic blocks? I never checked. I really need to get a battery in this. 12.5, 13 mil. So 13 mil thick blocks. I've made a washer just because I haven't got the right size. It's a little bit of plastic with a hole drilled through it. And what I can do is put my bolt through the spring, put the washer on, and the washer is same size as the hole I drilled. It's 9 mil actually, so it's got 0.5 mil clearance. And I've got a nut. Just pop that on there. And now what that results in is, oops, if I take the head of the bolt, once I get the washer inside at the bottom, I've got a sprung loaded bolt if it was all screwed together. So what I'm going to do now is just trial fit that onto the fridge, and hopefully all will start to make sense. I am designing this as I go, so I don't know what this can look like yet. Apologies if it's not the very best lighting on this video. It's night time and I'm working on Ruby, and it is where it is. Okay, so that's jamming up a little bit. So I need to look at the spring and work out why it's not pulling back. I think it's probably caught on the little interfaces between various stages. I have got the option to use a much smaller diameter spring. Yeah, as I release it, it's working better. We can start to consider, what do we do with this to make it come out to the right position? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole through this at probably 4 mil, 5 mil maybe, so it takes the shank of that, and countersink the hole just a little bit to sink the head back, so this moves a little, and then I'll better be able to see how I've got to adjust it, play with it, lengthen the bolt, lengthen the spring to enable it to come out the right amount. And when I've got that, when it's in its home position, which I can't really demonstrate because that's there, I'll literally sculpt it to match the front of the fridge door. So this is as far as I got last night in making up the piece of wood with the line on, counterboard hole in the top, all the parts made, tested. Now what I'm going to do is try and cut this curve which matches the front of the fridge, and because the little bit of wood is quite small, change of venue, come round to my dad's shed. There's Dad. Dad. Daddy's back. He was in hospital for a bit, as you know. He's got some really nice woodworking tools, so we're going to use his big bandsaw to try and cut the little curve on that bit of hardwood. Whereas it's been out of commission for a little while, it's just going to oil the deck and we're going to tidy it up a little bit. But we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if we can get this close to being the right shape. Think that'll be alright hanging out there? It's quite firm.
As long as you're firm on that, I'm sure it will.
Right, here we go then. It's a good picture.
I'll keep my hand there.
Hello, Mole. Sat on my foot.
My main thing is keep that flat.
Yeah. Yeah. Fitting really well.
Yeah. I think it is the best thing to do. And that plane is not moving. Mm.
Oh, the rain.
Good cut.
Very good cut. Now I've got a bit of length to cut off there. I don't. That might be too springy. Obviously, we can cut that off easy enough.
But you can handle that, can't you?
Yeah. So if I cut it off there, and then I can handle it under there, can't I?
Yeah.
So
let's
just go through there, and then I'll use that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shouldn't go anywhere near the screw. Really nice. Hello, Mole. She's sitting on my foot so she knows I don't move. There's my little helper down there. Yeah. Yeah, helping. Helping. Right, this is where I get my organisational skills from. Look at all this. So we've made that.
Yeah.
It's all got a nice shape on. Just the counter bore now is a little bit shallow because I've cut material off. So I'm going to go back to this fur, and so I don't skip off, I'm going to put it through and pull through the hole like that. Clear the hole. So that don't look too bad.
Have we got to do anything with this?
No, just... Well, there it is in its unpainted state. Very pleased with how that looks. Neat, simple, smooth, like this junk. Now I'm going to take this off and paint it up. I think I'd have it that way. I'll just, paint this and work on the little mechanism to stop it from rotating in that plane, just so it stays completely clear of the fridge door when it opens. So you don't want it doing that, you want it to stay nice and flat like that. So we want the catch to locate itself horizontally, and we've got these two screw holes, counterboard on the other side. and that's going to have a bolt in like that, but it still leaves quite a deep pocket, and that pocket could accommodate a 4mm nut, for instance. So what I think I'm going to do is just mark on the back of the piece of wood where these things are going to go. I'm going to take a Dremel just to knock the corners off for a bit more of a chamfer on the top edge of this, and I'm just going to super glue 2 nuts on the back as detents so that it locks nicely into position over that little socket like that. So you rejoin us on what is day 3 of this little project. I keep getting distracted, and almost exactly as I want it. The almost is a bit irritating, if I'm honest. So yeah, it's been painted just in grey primer and then lacquered, and it's a reasonable match. I'm not overly fussed about that. You can nicely reach round, lift it out and turn it. It's brilliant, and it detents to horizontal, so it doesn't swing around. So really pleased with that. The negative is the way I've done the detents is these 2 little nuts attached to the back. I didn't quite think it through enough because they now are slightly proud, and I could cover that by putting some foam pads top and bottom, but yeah, I mean, it didn't sit back in quite as flush. Yeah, I don't know. So I think what I'm going to do is kind of reverse this a little, by which I mean I'm going to take these pegs off, which is just a glued on nut and a glued and screwed on nut. I'm going to put a peg in here sticking out and a hole in the back of this. One way of achieving that, they're quite long bolts. I could put a washer in the bottom and try and back them out towards me, but other than that, I mean, the system works beautifully. And it all matches up. Very, very pleased. You're going soon. So I then set to on creating version 3. So I popped the hole in the back, and yeah, I made up a little tube spacer to force the head of the bolt to come forward and create the detent. It actually worked out pretty well after a little bit of fettling to make sure it went into the hole a bit easier. So before I show you the final finished item, I did decide to draw up a sort of list of things I used and do a quick diagram of the handle before it went on for the last time. In terms of the handle, I drew a line on it after I'd assembled it for the first time onto the fridge. So the curve on the front, there is no dimension for that. It depends where along the fridge you put it. But I'll put the rest of the dimensions in there just for your guide. I would say build your own, as I did, on the fly. It's probably fine. The width of the piece of wood very used is sort of 15-16 mm wide, and that whole thing is about 17 mm deep. That's about all we need to know. In terms of the rest of the bits and pieces, so other than the block of wood, which could equally be plastic, I used cap-headed bolts with hex drives. Why? Because I had them and they look pretty. But you need 3 of those at 50 mm long. I've actually got an odd one with a Phillips head in it, which I used for the pivot. But that's again just because that's where I got around me. In an ideal world, I'd have 3 matching bolts. But they're the right length and the right thread. And they're M4 threads. Then you need the threaded inserts.
Yes, you could try and get away with self-tapping like the original, but because the bolts are going to be longer and you've got more leverage on them, I would suggest it's worth doing the job properly and putting the threaded inserts in. And again, they're M4. I got a spring from my bumper box of springs, and the spring is 5mm in diameter, the one I finally used, and 35mm long, and a compression spring, meaning you can squeeze it and it comes back. A little bit of tube that I turned into a spacer to do the last little mod, and that's 8mm long, but again, play with it yourself. I got a nylock nut to go on the end of the pivot bolt with the spring. Nylock just means one with the anti-loose on it, the little blue plastic ring, so that it won't come undone whilst it's assembled. And of course we've got those little plastic nylon furniture building blocks. I don't even know what they're called. B&Q and Homebase and all the sort of DIY stores sell these by the bucketful. Screw together little plastic blocks. And that's what I used as the basis for making up the body or stand of my latch.
Smooth. Looks elegant, unlike that. You know when it's locked because it's locked. You know when it's not because it's not. It locks both of them at the same time. That can now go in the bin where it belongs. And if you guys want a copy, fine by me. If you're enjoying our channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notifications of new videos. And please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, and you can share the videos. And below the video is always the area where you can comment and get involved with the chat.